Hello, everyone. Today we're going to talk about the topic of hurricane control, right? Uh, Hurricane control, as the name suggests, is the idea of controlling hurricanes, stopping them. And this might seem impossible. Even we'll talk about it later, but NOAA even has a web page decrying the notion of using nuclear bombs to stop hurricanes because they get so many of that suggestion every single year, and it checks out. I did the math. I won't go over it here because it's too tedious, but a hurricane is 300 miles wide, and based on the 1,366 watts per square meter solar insolation, a hurricane feeds on the solar energy of a large hydrogen bomb every 4 minutes. It's just not possible, but what if I told you there was a way? And it's important. This isn't just like some minor distraction. Hurricanes are one of the most destructive natural disasters we experience, possibly the most destructive, on both a local and a national scale. They cause an incalculable amount of damage, and they render this otherwise paradisical place, like just take Florida for example, inhospitable to live in. You can't get insurance there. And as an engineering student, I don't want to accept the world for how it is. I believe in making the world a better place. Part of that is confronting global challenges. Even if you live in a place like Iowa, hurricanes affect you. They're about you, just because you live in a national economy that is, by definition, affected by hurricanes. You might well know somebody who was affected by a hurricane. You might have been affected by a hurricane yourself. So, how do we stop hurricanes? Well, it's not in nuclear weapons, no, it's in blotting out the sun. But first, let's really comprehensively consider the costs. So, a single event can just cause billions of dollars in damage. As relayed by researcher Ali Polero in The Economic Impact of Hurricanes and Natural Disasters, Hurricane Maria of 2017 caused 107.1 billion in damages. Hurricane Ian of 2022 caused 112.9 billion. The national economy is also harmed, of course, because this damages the local economy, which spills over into the national context. Hurricanes, of course, also cause death and flooding. For example, Hurricane Ian caused 149 deaths. Why do we have to stand idly by and let this happen? I don't think we do. So let's take a step back, a trip back in time, all the way to 1991, to the Gulf War. Specifically, so imagine a huge oil well, right? A gusher, as they say, like in the old westerns, shooting oil into the air. And now imagine taking a lighter and lighting it on fire, right? It would be pretty dramatic. You have this huge jet of flame going up into the sky, but it's also going to cause a lot of smoke. I think it would be very polluting. Now imagine doing this with 600 oil wells. This is what Iraqi forces did after they were retreating in the first Gulf War. They did this to over 600 wells, as relayed by researcher Olaf et al. In The Economic Impact of the Gulf War. And imagine just how much soot this injected into the atmosphere. Carbon, black carbon, basically. And as it would turn out, it was a truly enormous amount of smoke. It had profound effects on the local climate. And as relayed by Olaf et al., temperatures were up to 10 degrees Celsius lower than under normal years. That's just phenomenal. Like imagine that you're turning down the sun that much that you get like 10 degrees of Celsius cooling in one of the hottest places on Earth. That's amazing. And so the same thing has happened before with natural disasters. The best example is probably the 1815 Tambora eruption, which caused what was referred to as the year without a summer. And like the name suggests, this was a year where there was no discernible summer because Mount Tambora had erupted. And Mount Tambora, when it erupted, released 53 to 58 teragrams, which is 5.3 to 5.8 times 10 to the 13 grams of sulfur dioxide within, I'm quoting here, within a period of about 24 hours on 10th to 11th April 1815. This was sufficient to generate between 93 and 118 teragrams of stratospheric sulfate aerosols, which caused a cooling of 10 to 1.0 to 1.5 degrees Celsius. And that's from the same Self et al. Publication 2004. So we have at least one example of anthropogenic action in the Gulf War, albeit in a very messy way, reducing local temperatures just enormously. And we also know that from the Tambora eruption that injections of truly massive amounts of sulfur dioxide, which aren't really out of reach with civilization and the assembly line, can also cool the climate. Can we put this together? Wait, aren't sea surface temperatures what drive hurricanes? They are. Sea surface temperatures drive the thermodynamic engine of a hurricane. Like an engine, a hurricane is a heat engine. It's running off the heat difference between the Earth and space above, which it ultimately radiates up to. And if you want to stop this engine, like any other heat engine is beholden to the laws of thermodynamics, turn down the heat. So, We know we can cause local cooling with aerosols, like lighting all the Gulf War oil wells on fire. We know that sea surface temperatures drive hurricanes, and we know that hurricanes are a major economic problem. Why not use this method to attenuate hurricane intensity? I don't think there's a good reason for it. We have everything we need. This isn't just some conjecture, it's been seriously proposed in scholarly literature. In a 2021 article, S. Salter of the University of Edinburgh, I can't find his first initial and I'm not going to rely on unreliable Google searches, proposed using what's called marine cloud brightening. I just have to my notes here, to reduce sea surface temperatures and, in his words, moderate hurricanes. And the article contained a particularly memorable quote, which I'm going to read here. If you want to moderate a hurricane tomorrow, you will be far too late. You should have started last November, right? Cloud brightening is exactly what it sounds like. It's increasing cloud albedo, which is a fancy word for how much light it reflects. Something that's white, for example, has a high albedo, whereas something that's black has a low albedo. They want to make clouds brighter, and so when sunlight comes in from space, it reflects off the clouds and it doesn't reach the surface and heat the surface. You're turning down the temperature. And the proposal is to spray seawater into the air, which for very complex reasons, which we don't really need to think about for the context of this speech, we just need to think about the functionality of it, increases the count of condensed water particles in the clouds, and this makes them brighter. Again, we don't need to think about the why. That's for the scientists. We're thinking about the economics of this. And so what would this mean in practice? In the article, he relayed a vision of several hundred ships spraying water into the air, turning down sea surface temperatures in the Gulf of Mexico by 1 to 2 degrees Kelvin, which this would cost a lot of money. It would be billions of dollars for the operation. But wait, a hurricane also causes billions of dollars in damages, and they cause trillions across the national economy on long timescales. This would be one of the most cost-effective public works efforts probably ever. It could top the scales for the most cost-effective public works effort. An alternative would be to fly solar radiation management along the Gulf of Mexico, perhaps in the eastward side, and spray sulfate aerosols into the stratosphere or troposphere. In the troposphere, which is where the smoke from the Gulf War fires was confined, you have rain because weather occurs in the troposphere. And this results in the particles getting rained out, which might actually be desirable if you don't want to reduce temperatures, say, across the Atlantic globally, because if you inject particles up in the stratosphere, they don't get rained out, and they actually get heated, and what they do what's called self-lofting. Yeah, right. They're getting heated up and they're lofting themselves up, and they can stay up there for several years. So there's a lot of global debate on geoengineering and whether it's ethical to modify weather locally in a way that could make it worse in other countries. But if you did it in the troposphere, you wouldn't have to worry about that because it would rain out before reaching the other side of the Atlantic in Africa. And so the result would be the same in any case. You're not going to stop hurricanes. No, that's beyond our pale. But you will moderate them. You'll make them less intense. So imagine instead of a Category 5 hurricane being the worst, you have a Category 3 hurricane on the Saffir-Simpson scale. And just for reference, that is the difference between winds of approximately 110 miles per hour and 160 miles per hour. Now, in a flow, like wind blowing, dynamic pressure goes as the square of the velocity. Dynamic pressure is the pressure of the moving air. It's what knocks things over. So that's over a 50% reduction in dynamic pressure, which is what destroys things. Imagine if hurricanes never blighted the coast. Imagine if it was possible to get insurance in Florida. Or imagine if they just weren't as severe and you could hunker down and wait one out instead of having to run away from the storm surge. Imagine severe hurricanes fading into a memory of the past as something that once was, like, I don't know, like smallpox. We eradicated smallpox technologically, even though people thought it was impossible. We eradicated the screwworm largely in America. Why can't we do the same thing here? This isn't just a crazy dream or some unreachable aspiration. It's within what we can do. It's not nuking them into submission. That wouldn't work, as recounted by journalist A.J. Willingham in a 2019 article where the president at the time suggested that very thing in 2017. Even so, politicians can do something. You can do something by being part of the political process. You can call your politician. You can email them. You can demand that Congress take action on this. They're your representatives. Contact them, get involved in the political process, put pressure on them, and maybe just this crazy dream will become a reality. They have the power to fund mitigation efforts, and you can again put pressure on them. In conclusion, hurricanes aren't this impossible challenge anymore. Of course, the answer is far less theatrical, than something like a nuclear weapon. It's just mundane geoengineering and dimming the sun on a vast scale, but it's something we have the ability finally to do. A hurricane mitigation program, as I said, would be one of the most cost-effective public works operations in history, possibly the most effective ever. And it would cost billions, possibly hundreds of billions, but it would save trillions in just one hurricane, possibly. Uh, the only challenge is gathering the will. Write your representatives now and put pressure on public bodies. And given that will, given the participation, I think this is a great example of something that's showing that we can stop hurricanes, given that will. You don't even need a nuclear bomb, you just need to write your representative. And, given that will, you can stop even the awesome destructive force of a hurricane. Thank you.